Good evening, listeners. Envision the rattle of iron wheels echoing through endless darkness, your body jammed against strangers in a cattle car reeking of despair and unwashed fear, the world outside blurring into an unknown void. It's 1942, and as a young Jewish man torn from a Polish ghetto, you're thrust into Auschwitz's merciless grip, where survival clings to fragile threads of humanity. Yet, in this tale of shadows, we'll uncover glimmers of unbreakable will, not to unsettle, but to reflect and find peace. If it touches you, please like and subscribe with a genuine heart. Please tell us below, from where are you joining, and what time is it there? Now, soften the lights. Let a fan whisper its soothing breeze. Recline comfortably and allow this whispered history to ease your weary mind into a restful sleep. The cattle car's iron door screeches open, and a wave of cold air slaps your face, sharp as a blade's edge. You stumble out, legs numb from days pressed against trembling strangers, into a chaos that smells of diesel, damp wool, and something acrid you can't name. It's May 1942. And Auschwitz-Birkenau looms before you, a sprawl of barbed wire and brick under a sky that seems to have forgotten how to care. The SS guards bark orders in guttural German, their voices slicing through the fog of your exhaustion. Dogs snarl, their teeth glinting in the dawn's weak light, and you shuffle forward, clutching a tattered coat that holds the last remnants of your life. A photograph of your mother, creased and fading, tucked against your chest. The ground beneath your boots is slick with mud, each step a negotiation with gravity, as if the earth itself wants to swallow you whole. Above you, the iron arch of Auschwitz's entrance looms, its slogan, Arbeit macht frei, curling like a cruel smirk. Established in 1940 under Heinrich Himmler's orders as a camp for Polish prisoners, Auschwitz has since metastasized into a machine of annihilation, though you don't yet know its full horror. The words mock you. Work will set you free, they claim. Yet the air feels heavy with lies. You're herded through the gate, a faceless mass of shivering bodies, and the guards' batons prod you forward like cattle to slaughter. Your coat is ripped away, along with your name, your past, everything that tethered you to the world before. In this moment, you're no longer the boy who read poetry in Warsaw's cafes or helped his sister braid her hair. You're a shadow, stripped bare, and the realization cuts deeper than the cold. The SS move with mechanical precision, their faces carved from stone, as they shove you into a line beneath floodlights that burn like unblinking eyes. The selection begins, a word you'll learn to dread. Officers, some in crisp uniforms, others with the clinical detachment of doctors like Joseph Mengele, who arrived in 1943 to oversee these grim rituals, scan the crowd. They point left or right, their gloved hands deciding fates in seconds. You catch a glimpse of a woman clutching a child, her eyes wide with terror as she's directed left. You don't know it yet, but left means the gas chambers, operational since 1942, where Zyklon B would claim over 1 million lives, mostly Jews, by war's end. Your mother and sister are pushed that way, their hands slipping from yours. You try to call out, but your voice is a ghost, lost in the clamor of shouts and sobs. The absence of their touch is a wound that will never close. You're shoved right toward life, for now. The line moves to a low brick building, where the air stinks of phenol and fear. Here, the stripping of identity continues. Your clothes are torn off, replaced with a striped uniform that hangs like a shroud on your frame. A guard, his breath sour with tobacco, shaves your head with a dull razor, the blade scraping your scalp raw. Another presses a needle into your forearm, etching a number, A1112, like those in survivor Elie Wiesel's accounts, into your skin. The pain is sharp, but it's the finality that stings more. You're no longer a name, a son, a dreamer. You're Häftling, a prisoner, a digit in a ledger of death. The ink feels like a brand, sealing you into this new reality where hope is a currency you can't afford. As you stagger out, clutching the thin fabric of your uniform, you notice the other prisoners. Skeletal figures with hollow eyes, moving like marionettes whose strings are frayed. One whispers a prayer in Yiddish, his voice a fragile thread in the din, reminding you of your father's voice at Sabbath dinners. The memory is a cruel guest, slipping in uninvited, and you push it away. The guards herd you toward a barrack, a wooden coffin of a building where the air is thick with the stench of unwashed bodies and despair. You step inside, and the darkness swallows you, broken only by slivers of light through cracked planks. The bunks, stacked like shelves for the dead, creak under the weight of men who've already forgotten how to dream. Outside, the camp hums with a mechanical cruelty. The SS, under Himmler's command, had turned Auschwitz into a factory of death, its sub-camps sprawling across Upper Silesia to feed industries like IG Farben. Yet amidst this machine, there's a flicker of defiance. A man beside you, his face gaunt but eyes sharp, mutters, "They can take my name but not my will." It's a spark, small and reckless, but it lodges in your chest. You don't know if it's courage or madness, but it's something to grip onto as the night closes in. The cold seeps into your bones, and you curl up on a bunk, the straw mattress prickling like a bed of nails. You think of home, of Warsaw's bustling streets, now reduced to rubble and ghettos since the Nazi occupation in 1939. The contrast is a quiet ache, a reminder of how far you've fallen. Yet, there's a strange clarity here, born of desperation. A wry observation that if this is hell, at least it's honest about it. The world outside, with its promises of freedom and justice, feels like a fairy tale you were foolish to believe. You close your eyes, not to sleep, but to escape the weight of this new truth. Tomorrow looms like a predator, and you know survival will demand more than your body can give. But for now, you breathe, and that's rebellion enough. In this moment, you feel the weight of history, not just yours, but of millions who will pass through these gates. Auschwitz, a name that will echo through time, is no longer just a place. It's a testament to humanity's capacity for cruelty and resilience. You don't know the full scope yet. How 1.1 million will perish here. How survivors like Primo Levi will carry these scars into words that shape the future. But you sense it, like a shadow cast backward from a time you may never see. Your breath catches, a small act of defiance against the void, and you cling to it, knowing that to live another day is to defy the machine that seeks to erase you. The night in the barracks is a restless beast, its breath heavy with the moans of strangers and the creak of splintered bunks. You lie awake, your new number, A1112, burning beneath your skin, a cruel tattoo that binds you to this place. The selection from yesterday, a brutal sorting orchestrated by SS officers under Himmler's 1940 vision for the camp, lingers like a wound that won't clot. Your mother and sister were herded left, toward the gas chambers that churn through thousands daily with Zyklon B. You didn't know their fate then, but the silence where their voices should be screams louder than any guard's command. You clutch the space in your pocket where your mother's photograph once rested, now confiscated, and feel the world unraveling. Dawn breaks with a gong's harsh clang, dragging you from a half-sleep haunted by Warsaw's cobblestone streets. The SS, their boots thudding like a metronome of doom, shout for the appel. The daily roll call that began with Auschwitz's founding in 1940. You stumble into the yard, where thousands stand in ragged lines, their striped uniforms flapping like tattered flags in the biting wind. The air smells of coal dust and decay, the sky a bruised grey that mirrors your soul. A capo, one of the prisoner overseers who traded cruelty for survival, prowls the ranks, his whip snapping at those too slow or too weak. You straighten, though your knees tremble, knowing a misstep could mean a beating. Or worse, another selection. By 1943, Josef Mengelé's arrival would make these inspections even deadlier. But for now, the SS officer's cold eyes are enough to freeze your blood. The roll call drags on, an eternity of standing in mud that clings like despair. You count the seconds to keep your mind from fracturing. Each breath a small rebellion against the camp's relentless arithmetic. Over 400,000 Hungarian Jews will face these lines in 1944 alone, most never surviving the first day. A man beside you, his face a map of hunger, mutters something about his wife, his voice a fragile thread in the wind. You don't respond, but his words stir a memory of your sister's laughter, now a ghost you can't chase. The capo barks, and you snap back to the present, your body aching from the cold that seeps through the thin fabric of your uniform, a mockery of protection designed to degrade. When the count finally ends, you're herded to work. The SS drove you toward a quarry, part of Auschwitz's expansion into a labor hub for the Reich's war machine since 1941. Your task is to haul stones, each one heavy as regret, under the capo's watchful glare. The work is senseless, piling rocks only to move them again tomorrow. But it's a ritual of survival. Your hands blister, the skin splitting like promises broken, and the dust coat your throat, making every swallow a battle. A fellow prisoner, his eyes sunken but sharp, whispers, "Keep moving, or you're kindling." His wry tone, born of desperation, lands like a bitter jest. You nod, gripping another stone, and wonder if survival is just a slower way to die. Midday brings a pause, if you can call it that. You're handed a ration, a crust of bread, grey and mould-flecked, and a bowl of watery soup that smells of rot. Cabbage scraps and something unnameable, a far cry from the Sabbath meals of your past. Historical records note that the daily intake averaged 200 grams of bread and a litre of this soup, barely enough to sustain life. You force it down, the taste a grim reminder of how far you've fallen from the boy who savoured his mother's coolant. Across from you, a prisoner chokes on his portion, then laughs softly. At least it's not yesterday's mud. The dark humour, a spark in the void, keeps you from sinking entirely into the abyss. You chew slowly, savouring the act of eating, if not the food, because it's proof you're still here. The afternoon drags you back to the quarry, where the sun, a reluctant witness, barely warms the air. You heft stones until your shoulders scream. Each movement is mechanical, as if your body has learned to obey while your mind drifts. You think of Warsaw before the ghetto, children playing in parks, the scent of fresh bread from bakeries, a world now as distant as a dream. The contrast is a quiet knife, cutting deeper than the capo's whip. Auschwitz's purpose, refined since its 1940 inception, is to erase not just lives, but memories. Yet you cling to them, a silent act of defiance. A guard shouts, snapping you back, and you drop a stone, earning a curse but no blow. Luck, or perhaps indifference, spares you today. As evening falls, you're marched back to the barracks, your body a map of aches. The camp's rhythm is relentless, a machine that grinds souls into dust. You pass a crematorium, its chimney belching smoke that carries the sickening sweetness of burned flesh, a prelude to the horrors you'll face later. By 1943, these ovens would process thousands daily, but even now, their presence is a constant threat. You avoid looking, focusing instead on the crunch of gravel under your boots, a sound that anchors you to the present. Inside the barracks, you collapse onto your bunk, the straw stabbing your skin like accusations. A prisoner, his voice barely above a whisper, hums a Yiddish lullaby, the notes fragile but unbroken. It's a reminder that even here in this engineered hell, humanity persists, stubborn as a weed in cracked stone. You lie there, staring at the barracks ceiling, where shadows dance like spectres of the life you lost. The man next to you, his breath ragged, mutters about a letter he'll never write. "What's the point?" he says, his tone laced with a grim chuckle. No one would believe this. His words echo your thoughts, a wry observation that the truth here is too monstrous for the world outside. You don't answer, but you feel it, the weight of a story that will outlive you, that must outlive you. Auschwitz, with 1 million victims, is a testament to cruelty, but also to the resilience of those who endured. You close your eyes, not expecting sleep, but seeking a moment's respite. The lullaby fades, and you hold on to its echo, a lifeline in the dark. The camp's design, from its barbed wire to its brutal routines, seeks to reduce you to nothing, a number, a shadow, a statistic. Yet, in the quiet rebellion of memory, you resist. You think of your father's hands, calloused from work, or the way your sister's eyes lit up at stories. These fragments, though painful, are your armor. They remind you that survival is not just breathing, but carrying the past into a future that might one day listen. As the barracks settle into a tense silence, you breathe deeply, tasting the stale air, and vow to endure. Not for glory, but for the simple, stubborn act of being. In a world that demands your erasure, to exist is to defy. The barracks' darkness clings like a shroud as the gong shatters the fragile veil of night, its clang echoing through your bones like a summons from the underworld. It's barely dawn, the sky a reluctant grey, and you drag yourself from the bunk, muscles protesting with a dull fire that speaks of yesterday's trials. In Auschwitz, where routines were etched into the camp's fabric since its establishment, the appel, the morning roll call, begins at 4:30 in summer or 5:30 in winter, a merciless clockwork that defies the body's plea for mercy. You shuffle into the yard with the others, a sea of striped figures, their forms blurred in the mist, standing in rigid lines that stretch like shadows across the frozen ground. The cold bites deep, turning breath to vapor that hangs in the air, a fleeting testament to life amid the stillness. You stand motionless, as do the thousands around you, emaciated frames wrapped in uniforms so thin they mock the very idea of shelter. The fabric, coarse and ill-fitting, whispers against your skin with every shiver, a constant reminder of how vulnerability has become your second nature. Snowflakes drift lazily, settling on eyelashes and shoulders, transforming the assembly into a tableau of silent statues, each one a study in quiet defiance. Historical echoes from survivors like Viktor Frankl, who endured similar ordeals in other camps, describe this as a test of will, where the mind wanders to preserve the soul. Your thoughts drift to the warmth of a forgotten hearth, the scent of bread rising in a kitchen long lost. But you pull them back, anchoring yourself to the present. To falter here is to invite the capo's wrath, and you've learned already that survival dances on the edge of such small disciplines. The hours, an eternity woven from discomfort and dread. The SS officers pace the lines, their footsteps crunching the frost, counting heads with a precision that reduces you to mere inventory. One pauses near you, his gaze sweeping like a scythe, and you hold your breath, willing your body to stillness despite the tremor in your legs. The capo, a prisoner elevated to overseer through the Nazi system dating back to 1933, hovers like a vulture, his whip coiled but ready. He was once like you, perhaps, but power's poison has twisted him, making his blows a currency for his fragile existence. You observe this silently, a subtle irony settling in your mind, that in this hierarchy of suffering, even the tormented become tormentors, a cycle as inevitable as the dawn. As the count drags on, your mind wanders to fragments of the world beyond the wire. You recall whispers of resistance in the ghettos, acts of quiet sabotage that now seem like fables from another era. Here, in Auschwitz's vast machinery, expanded since 1941 to encompass labor for the Reich's endless hunger, such thoughts feel like distant stars, beautiful but unreachable. A man in the line ahead sways, his knees buckling, and the capo descends, the whip cracking like thunder. The sound reverberates, a stark punctuation to the silence, and you avert your eyes, focusing on the snow at your feet, its crystals glinting like shattered dreams. Yet, in this moment of averted gaze, a wry reflection surfaces. How peculiar that endurance is measured not in strength, but in the art of invisibility. Finally, the appel concludes, the officers dispersing with nods and notes, leaving you to exhale a breath you didn't realize you'd held. You're herded toward the work sites, the ground thawing slightly underfoot, turning to sludge that sucks at your wooden clogs. The capo leads the way, his voice a bark of commands, directing you to a ditch where shovels wait like skeletal arms. Your task is to dig endless furrows for drainage, or perhaps nothing at all, a labor designed to break spirits as much as bodies. The shovel's handle is rough, splintered from countless hands before yours, and as you drive it into the earth, the impact jars up your arms, a rhythmic thud that mirrors your heartbeat. Sweat beads, despite the chill, mixing with the dirt to form a grimy second skin. You work in silence at first, the group a chain of bent backs, each swing of the tool a small conquest over inertia. A fellow prisoner, his face etched with lines that belie his youth, grunts with effort, then pauses to wipe his brow. "Digging our graves, one scoop at a time," he murmurs, his tone laced with a bitter edge that draws a faint, shared nod from those nearby. It's not laughter, but a recognition, a spark of shared absurdity that lightens the load for a fleeting second. You continue, the earth yielding reluctantly, clods heavy with moisture that clings like regret. Historical records whisper of how these labors fueled the camp's expansion, turning Auschwitz into a network of suffering that spanned miles, all to serve the Nazi war effort. As the morning wears on, the capo's whip sings through the air, urging a faster pace. It lands on a straggler, the crack echoing like a judgment from on high, and you redouble your efforts, the shovel becoming an extension of your will. Pain blooms in your shoulders, a fire that spreads, but you embrace it, transforming agony into purpose. In this monotonous grind, your mind seeks refuge in memories of simpler exertions, tending a garden in spring, the soil rich and forgiving. The contrast is a quiet ache, underscoring how far humanity can stray from its roots. Yet, there's a subtle irony in the toil. What the Nazis intend as degradation becomes, in your quiet defiance, a forge for inner steel. Noon approaches, and a brief halt is called, the capo barking for you to straighten lines. Water is doled out, tepid and scarce, from a bucket that tastes of rust and shared desperation. You sip carefully, the liquid a meager balm against the thirst that gnaws like an old friend. Conversations flicker in hushed tones, snatches of stories from home, a joke about the capo's moustache resembling a rat's tail, drawing suppressed smirks. These moments, fragile as frost, weave a web of camaraderie, a reminder that even in this engineered void, connections endure. You listen, absorbing the words like nourishment, knowing that tomorrow might sever these threads. The afternoon resumes with unrelenting vigor, the ditch lengthening like a scar across the landscape. Your hands bleed now, the blisters bursting, but you wrap rags around them, improvise bandages from torn cloth. The capo circles, his eyes sharp, and you avoid his gaze, focusing on the rhythm. Dig, lift, toss. Each motion is a meditation, a way to transcend the physical torment. You ponder the broader tapestry, how Auschwitz, once a Polish barracks, evolved under Himmler's 1940 decree into this behemoth of brutality, its routines a blueprint for dehumanization replicated across the Reich. Yet, in your persistence, there's a tacit rebuke to that design, a living testament to the unyielding core that no whip can reach. As the light fades, the capo signals the end, and you're marched back, bodies weary but unbroken. The yard empties, the snow beginning to fall again, blanketing the ground in deceptive purity. You reflect on the day's toll, a quiet observation that endurance is less about strength than about the subtle art of outlasting the storm. In this place, where history's darkest strokes paint the canvas, your continued breath is a stroke of light, faint but persistent. The barrack awaits, its shadows a temporary haven, and you step inside, carrying the weight of the day like a badge of quiet victory. Tomorrow will demand the same, but for now you rest, the rhythm of your heart a steady drum against the encroaching night. The dawn's chill lingers, a ghostly reminder of the night's restless grip, as you're roused from the barrack's thin slumber by the capo's shout, sharp as a splinter in the silence. You rise, the straw mattress leaving its prickly mark on your skin, and shuffle into the yard, where the air tastes of coal ash and unspoken dread. The roll call is over, it's a dull ache, and now you're driven toward another day of labor, the kind that grinds bones to dust and hope to ash. Today, you're assigned to a construction detail, building extensions for Birkenau, the camp's monstrous sibling, designed to amplify the Reich's capacity for annihilation. Your clogs sink into the mud, each step a quiet argument with despair, as you march toward a site where purpose is a cruel illusion. The work begins under a sky that seems to sag with indifference, its grey expanse unbroken by any promise of warmth. You're handed a shovel, its handle worn smooth by countless hands before yours, and tasked with hauling bricks to a half-built wall, part of the camp's expansion to house the influx of prisoners. The bricks are heavy, their edges biting into your palms, and you stack them with a rhythm that feels like surrender. The capo, a prisoner-turned-predator by the Nazi system established in 1933, circles like a hawk, his eyes glinting with the power to punish. You move faster when he nears, not out of fear, but from a bone-deep instinct to stay unseen, a skill you've honed in these early days. The wall grows brick by brick, a monument to futility that mocks the idea of progress. Your muscles scream, a chorus of protest against the relentless pace. But you press on. The shovels scrape against earth, a metronome for your survival. Around you, the work detail is a tableau of bent figures, their striped uniforms blending into the mud like ghosts half forgotten. A man nearby, his face a canvas of hunger, drops a brick, and the capo's whip cracks, its sound a jagged tear in the air. He stumbles, rights himself, and continues, his eyes meeting yours for a fleeting moment. "At least the wall won't shoot us," he mutters, his voice dry as the dust at your feet. The wry jest, born of desperation, sparks a flicker of connection, a reminder that humor, however dark, is a lifeline here. You nod, the ghost of a smile tugging at your lips, and return to your task, the bricks piling higher as if to wall off the world you once knew. The labor is mindless, yet it demands every ounce of your focus. Each brick feels like a debt you'll never pay, a weight that mirrors the absence in your chest where family once lived. You think of your father's hands, rough from years in his tailor shop, and how they'd mend your coat with care. The memory is a quiet intruder, slipping through the cracks of your fatigue, and you let it linger, a brief rebellion against the camp's erasure. Auschwitz, with its 40 sub-camps feeding industries like IG Farben, thrives on stripping such memories, but you hoard them like stolen treasure. The capo shouts, pulling you back, and you heft another brick, its cold surface a stark contrast to the warmth of those lost days. Midday offers no reprieve, only a pause to choke down a ration that insults the name of food. You're given a sliver of bread, its mold a faint green stain, and a bowl of soup so thin it's more memory than meal. Cabbage scraps floating like regrets in a broth that smells of decay. Historical accounts confirm this meager diet, averaging 200 grams of bread daily, was designed to starve prisoners slowly, sustaining labor just enough to delay death. You eat standing, the capo's gaze a constant pressure, and the soup's bitterness clings to your tongue like a grudge. A prisoner across from you, his fingers trembling, spills his portion and laughs, a short, hollow sound. "Guess I'll dine on air today," he says, his eyes glinting with a defiance that borders on madness. You swallow hard, the act of eating a quiet victory, and return the bowl, its emptiness a mirror of your own. The afternoon stretches, an endless expanse of toil under a sun that refuses to warm. You're moved to a new task, clearing rubble from a site where barracks will rise, part of Birkenau's expansion to process the Reich's victims more efficiently. The stones are jagged, tearing at your hands, and the dust coats your lungs, each breath a gritty reminder of your fragility. You work beside a man named Levi, perhaps a nod to Primo Levi, whose accounts of Auschwitz's brutality will later sear the world's conscience. He moves with a quiet precision, his eyes scanning the ground as if searching for something more than stones. "Keep your hands busy," he whispers, "or your mind will break first." His words, laced with a grim pragmatism, settle into you, a subtle guide through the haze of exhaustion. As the hours grind on, the camp's rhythm becomes a pulse you can't escape. The distant clatter of trains signals more arrivals, each one feeding the machine that Himmler's 1940 decree set in motion. You glimpse smoke rising from a crematorium, its sickly sweetness a harbinger of horrors yet to come. Though you don't yet know the full scope of the gas chamber's efficiency, processing thousands daily by 1943. The sight tightens your chest, but you focus on the rubble, each piece a small defiance against the void. A capo's shout interrupts, his voice a lash, and you quicken your pace, the stones blurring into a mosaic of pain and persistence. You wonder, in a fleeting moment, if the world outside still turns, or if it's forgotten you as thoroughly as you've been forced to forget yourself. Dust descends, painting the sky in hues of ash and sorrow. The work detail ends, and you're marched back to the barracks, your body a map of bruises and cuts. The ground beneath you is a churned mess, reflecting the chaos within. As you pass a watchtower, its searchlight sweeps like a predator's gaze, and you shrink into yourself, a reflex born of necessity. Inside the barracks, the air is thick with the stench of sweat and despair, but there's a moment of reprieve. Levi, the man from earlier, offers a nod, his face weary but unbroken. "We're still here," he says, his tone carrying a dry irony, as if survival is a joke only the living can tell. You collapse onto your bunk, the straw a cruel mockery of comfort, and let his words linger, a faint beacon in the dark. The night wraps around you, heavy with the weight of what's been lost and what's yet to come. You think of the life before, Warsaw's markets, the clink of glasses at family dinners, the simple joy of a book read by lamplight. These memories are contraband, smuggled past the camp's relentless erasure, and you guard them fiercely. Auschwitz, with its calculated cruelty, seeks to strip you of such anchors, but in their preservation, you find a quiet strength. The barracks hums with the soft sounds of others, whispers, coughs, a murmured prayer, and you realize that survival here is not just physical, but a defiance of spirit. The barracks' wooden walls groan under the weight of night, their cracks letting in slivers of moonlight that dance like ghosts across the floor. You lie on your bunk, the straw beneath you sharp as accusations, your body a map of aches from hauling bricks in Birkenau's ever-growing shadow. The air is thick with the sour tang of sweat and the faint, lingering sweetness of distant crematoria, a reminder of the camp's purpose. Over 1 million lives will be extinguished here. Sleep eludes you, not because of the cold seeping through your thin uniform, but because your mind clings to fragments of a life before this hell, refusing to let them dissolve into the void. In the darkness, the barracks hum with the soft murmurs of fellow prisoners, their voices weaving a fragile tapestry of resistance against despair. A man 2 bunks over, his silhouette barely discernible, speaks in a low, trembling Yiddish, recounting a tale of his daughter's first steps in a Krakow courtyard. His words are a lifeline, pulling you back to memories of your own sister, her laughter bright as a summer dawn. You close your eyes, letting the image linger, but it's edged with pain, like a photograph torn at the corners. The Nazis, under Himmler's 1940 decree, designed this place to strip such memories, yet these whispered stories defy their intent, stitching together the remnants of humanity in a place that thrives on its erasure. Another voice joins, softer, almost a sigh. It's an older man, his accent thick with the cadence of Lodz, sharing a recipe for his wife's coolant, the stew that warmed his winters before the ghetto's walls rose in 1940. Potatoes, beans, a pinch of hope, he says, his chuckle dry as the straw beneath you. The humour, born of desperation, lands like a spark in the gloom, and you find yourself smiling, a reflex that feels like rebellion. You don't speak, but you listen, each word a thread in the fragile web of connection that holds you together. These stories, passed like contraband in the night, are more nourishing than the mouldy bread of the day, a quiet defiance against the camp's relentless arithmetic of death. The barracks' silence is never true silence. It's punctuated by coughs, the creak of bunks, and the distant wail of a train bringing more souls to this abyss. Historical records note that by 1944, trains from Hungary alone delivered thousands daily, most sent straight to the gas chamber's operation. You try not to think of the faces you saw during the selection, your mother's eyes, wide with unspoken pleas, but they haunt you, shadows that refuse to fade. Instead, you focus on the voices around you, their cadence a rhythm that soothes, like a lullaby for the damned. A young man, his voice barely above a whisper, recounts a soccer match in his village, the ball soaring over a field now likely trampled by war. "We won by a goal," he says, then adds, "Guess we're still losing now." The wry observation, delivered with a faint smirk, draws a shared breath of recognition from the dark. You shift on your bunk, the straw jabbing your ribs, and let your mind wander to a Warsaw evening, the glow of candles at your family's table, the clink of glasses raised in toast. The memory is a thief, stealing your breath with its clarity, and you clutch it tightly, knowing how easily it could slip away. Auschwitz's design, refined over the years to serve the Reich's genocidal vision, seeks to grind such moments into dust, but you hold them like embers, warm against the cold. A prisoner nearby, his voice hoarse, begins a story of a book he loved, a tale of knights and quests, and you listen, the words painting colours in the greyness of your mind. These stories are not just an escape. They're a declaration that you're more than a number, more than the Häftling branded on your arm. The night deepens, and the tales grow quieter, as if the darkness itself demands reverence. A man from Vilna, his breath uneven, speaks of his synagogue's stained glass windows, their hues catching the sun before the Nazis burned it in 1941. His voice cracks, not from sorrow, but from the effort to preserve the image, to keep it alive in this place where life is currency. You think of your own synagogue, its wooden pews worn smooth by generations, now likely reduced to ash like so much of Poland's Jewish heart. The thought is a quiet weight, but you don't let it crush you. Instead, you focus on the man's words, their cadence a bridge to a world that still exists, if only in whispers. A sudden cough from the bunk below startles you, sharp as a gunshot in the stillness. The man there, his face hidden, mutters about a joke he once told at a wedding, something about a rabbi and a goat. "Got a laugh then," he says, his tone edged with a bitter amusement. "Here, it'd get me a whip." The dark humour, a blade honed by despair, cuts through the heaviness, and you feel a pang of gratitude for its audacity. You don't laugh, but you hold the moment, a small act of defiance against the camp's relentless hunger to consume all joy. These exchanges, fleeting and fragile, are the threads that bind you to the others, a reminder that even in this engineered hell, humanity persists, stubborn as a weed in barren soil. As the hours crawl, the stories fade, replaced by the soft rustle of bodies shifting in restless sleep. You lie still, your breath shallow, and let your thoughts drift to the broader canvas of this nightmare. Auschwitz, with its crematoria and barbed wire, is a testament to humanity's capacity for cruelty, but these nighttime whispers reveal its counterpart, the unyielding will to endure. Survivors like Elie Wiesel, who later chronicled this darkness, spoke of these moments as lifelines, preserving identity against the machine. You don't know their names yet, but you feel their truth in the voices around you, each one a spark in the void, a refusal to be extinguished. The barrack settles into a deeper quiet, broken only by the occasional whimper or the distant bark of a guard's dog. You think of the train still rolling, carrying souls to their end, and the weight of that knowledge presses like a stone on your chest. Yet, in this moment, the stories linger. Their echoes a soft armor against despair. You recall a line from your father's favorite poem, something about light persisting in darkness, and it feels like a secret you're meant to keep. The camp may strip your name, your body, your past, but it cannot take this, the quiet rebellion of memory shared in the dark. The Nazis, with their calculated brutality, seek to erase you, but in these fleeting moments, you reclaim yourself. You think of today's world, where freedom is a given, and feel a quiet gratitude for its ease, a contrast to the cost paid here. Your breath steadies, a rhythm against the night's weight, and you hold onto the voices, their warmth a faint promise that dawn, however cruel, will find you still here, still human, still defiant in your refusal to vanish. The barracks whispers fade into the pre-dawn hush, leaving you with a hollow ache that no story can fill. The capo's shout pierces the gloom, herding you and the others into the yard where the ground is slick with dew, each footprint a temporary mark on the indifferent earth. Rumors have circulated. Another selection looms, a ritual that has become as routine as the roll call since the camp's grim operations intensified. You shuffle forward, your striped uniform clinging like a second skin grown too tight, and wonder if this is the day your luck fractures. The SS guards, their faces masks of detached efficiency, drive you toward a floodlit area near the infirmary block, where the lights blaze like accusing stars in the lingering night. The selection, conducted weekly to cull the weak for the gas chambers, begins without fanfare, a mechanical sorting that echoes the camp's founding purpose under Himmler in 1940, to eliminate those deemed unfit for labor. You're ordered to strip, the command barked in clipped German, and you comply, peeling away the thin fabric that offers the illusion of dignity. Naked now, you stand shoulder to shoulder with hundreds of others, their bodies a mosaic of bruises and hollows, the cold air raising goose flesh on your skin like 1,000 invisible pins. The floodlights wash everything in a harsh white, turning flesh to marble, shadows sharp as knives. You try to stand tall, chest out, mimicking strength despite the tremor in your limbs, knowing that a slouch or a cough could seal your fate. The line shuffles forward, a slow procession under the unblinking glare, and you feel the weight of eyes upon you. SS officers, some scribbling notes, others gesturing with gloved hands. By 1943, Josef Mengele would elevate these inspections to a perverse science, selecting subjects for his experiments. But even now, the process is a lottery of death. You glance sideways at a boy, no older than 15, his ribs stark against pale skin, trying to puff up like a bird ruffling feathers. He catches your eye, and there's a flicker of shared terror, a silent pact in the chaos. The air smells of fear sweat and phenol from the nearby disinfection huts, a scent that clings like guilt. You straighten further, willing your body to betray no weakness, but inside, your heart races like a trapped animal, each beat a plea for mercy from a universe that has turned deaf. As the officers approach, their boots crunching gravel with deliberate slowness, you hear the first judgments fall, left for death, right for another day of torment. A woman ahead, her body curved from exhaustion, is pointed left, her wail cutting through the night like a siren's lament. She clutches at a child, but they're separated, the boy's small hand slipping away as he's dragged right, his cries echoing back in fractured sobs. The elderly fare worse. An old man with a beard like frost is shoved left, his protest drowned in the capo's shouts. These scenes, repeated across Auschwitz's history, claimed thousands weekly, feeding the crematoria that belched smoke ceaselessly. You swallow hard, the taste of bile rising, and focus on breathing steadily. Each inhale a calculated act to appear vital, unbreakable. The line inches on, and now it's your turn. The officer's gaze sweeps over you, clinical as a scalpel, lingering on your arms, your stance. Time stretches, a taut wire ready to snap, and you hold his eyes for a heartbeat, projecting a strength you barely feel. He nods right, and relief floods you like a cold wave, but it's tainted with guilt as the man behind you is directed left, his gasp a whisper of finality. You move aside, dressing hastily in the shadows, the uniform's roughness a strange comfort after the exposure. The selection continues, a parade of vulnerability where bodies are appraised like livestock, and you watch from the periphery, your heart a drum of muted horror. Children cling to skirts, their wide eyes reflecting the floodlights, but many are torn away, their screams piercing the night like shards of glass. Night deepens as the process drags, the floodlights casting long shadows that twist like tormented souls across the yard. The cries of the condemned echo, a chorus of anguish that reverberates through the camp, blending with the distant rumble of trains unloading more victims. Historical whispers from survivors like Ruth Elias describe these nights as eternal, where the air itself thickens with sorrow. You huddle with the selected for life, your body shivering not just from cold, but from the proximity to oblivion. A man nearby, his face gaunt under the lights, mutters, "We're the lucky ones, until tomorrow's draw." His tone carries a bitter edge, a wry nod to the lottery of survival, and you nod silently, the observation settling like frost on your thoughts. The selection winds down, the left-bound group herded away, their footsteps fading into the dark like a receding storm. You're marched back to the barracks, the ground now churned into mud by countless feet, each print a testament to those who won't return. Inside, the air is stale, heavy with the unspoken, and you climb into your bunk, the straw a nest of unease. The cries still echo in your mind, those of children and elders pulled into the void, their voices a curse that lingers like smoke. You feel a paralysis creep in, not of body, but of spirit, the repeated horror weaving a web that traps your thoughts. How many more nights like this? The question hangs unanswered, a quiet reflection on the camp's inexorable cycle. Lying there, you let the darkness enfold you. The barracks breathes a symphony of survival. You think of the world outside, where nights bring rest rather than reckoning, and feel a quiet gratitude for the simple act of continuing. Auschwitz, with its weekly cullings from 1942 onward, is a forge of fate, testing the limits of endurance. But in your stillness, you find a subtle resilience. The cries fade, but their echo remains, a reminder that memory is a weapon against forgetting. You close your eyes, the floodlights glare imprinted on your lids, and breathe, each inhalation a defiance, a vow to bear witness to the shadows that dance just beyond sight. In this limbo, your reflections turn inward, pondering the absurdity of selection. Bodies paraded like goods in a marketplace of death. A subtle irony surfaces. In striving to appear strong, you become a performer in a theatre of the absurd, where the prize is another day of torment. You push the thought away, focusing on the rhythm of your heartbeat, a steady pulse against the night's weight. The camp's history, etched in the cries that still ring faintly, is a tapestry of loss, but also of the unyielding spark that refuses to dim. You hold on to that, a quiet anchor, knowing that survival here is not just fate, but a choice to persist, to carry the weight of those cries into whatever dawn awaits. The barrack settles, and you drift toward uneasy rest, the paralysis easing into a trance-like resolve, a testament to the human capacity to endure the unendurable. The dawn arrives not with light, but with a suffocating haze, the air thick with the sour reek of sickness that clings to the barracks like a curse. Auschwitz-Birkenau now harbours a new predator, typhus, a plague carried by lice that thrives in the camp's squalor. You rise from your bunk, the straw damp with sweat, your body a reluctant vessel after days of relentless labor. The memory of the selection's cold judgment lingers, but today's threat is less visible. A creeping fever that has already claimed thousands since its outbreak intensified in 1941. You shuffle toward the yard, your clogs dragging through mud that smells of decay, and notice the barracks' silence is broken by coughs, dry, rasping sounds that echo like warnings in the half-light. Outside, the roll call is a grim ritual, but today it feels heavier, the lines thinner as sickness culls those too weak to stand. You notice gaps where familiar faces once stood, their absence a silent toll of the epidemic that ravaged Auschwitz. You stand straighter, though your joints ache, masking the tremor in your hands. The capo's eyes sweep the ranks, less interested in numbers than in spotting weakness, his whip coiled like a serpent at rest. A man beside you sways, his breath a labored wheeze, and you subtly nudge him upright, a wordless act of defiance against the fever's grip. The air is heavy with the stench of unwashed bodies and something sharper, disease, festering in the camp's cramped, filthy conditions, a byproduct of Nazi neglect designed to let nature aid their genocide. You're assigned to a work detail, not the quarry this time, but a sorting yard where confiscated belongings pile like relics of a lost world. Suitcases cracked open like broken promises, spill clothes, books, and photographs under the watchful eyes of SS guards. Your task is to sift through them, separating valuables for the Reich's coffers, a grim harvest that began with the camp's expansion in 1941 to exploit prisoners' possessions. You handle a child's doll, its button eyes staring blankly, and feel a pang for the hands that once held it. The capo barks, urging haste, but you pause over a tattered journal, its pages filled with neat script. You slip it under your shirt, a reckless theft, knowing discovery could mean a beating. The act feels like reclaiming a piece of humanity, a quiet rebellion against the camp's hunger to erase all traces of life. The work is endless, the piles growing as trains arrive daily, each unloading more lives to be sorted, discarded, or destroyed. You move mechanically, hands sorting while your mind drifts to a Warsaw market, where vendors hawked apples and laughter was currency. The contrast is a blade slicing through the fog of fatigue, and you cling to it, a reminder that memory is a sanctuary the SS cannot breach. A fellow prisoner, his face pale as ash, coughs violently, then mutters, "Sorting their treasures while we waste away. Poetic, isn't it?" His wry tone, edged with fevered irony, draws a faint nod from you, a shared acknowledgement of the absurdity that binds you. Midday brings a pause, but no relief. You're handed a tin cup of water cloudy with grit, and a crust of bread so stale it crumbles like regret. You chew slowly, the act a meditation to stave off the hunger that gnaws like a restless ghost. Nearby, a young man, his eyes sunken but defiant, collapses, his body racked by typhus's fever. You hesitate, then kneel beside him, offering a sip from your cup, the water dribbling down his chin. The capo's shadow looms, and you brace for a blow, but he moves on, perhaps too tired to care. This act, small and perilous, echoes the quiet resistance that threads through Auschwitz's history. Acts of compassion risking punishment to preserve a shred of humanity. You wrap a rag around the man's forehead, its dampness a poor balm, and whisper words of comfort, though they feel hollow against his labored breaths. The afternoon drags, the sorting yard a labyrinth of loss under a sky that refuses to weep. You handle a silk scarf, its softness a cruel reminder of a world where beauty had meaning, and tuck it away for the man you helped, a futile gesture against his fever. The capo's shout pulls you back, and you resume work. The rhythm of sorting a trance that dulls the mind. You think of home, of your mother's hands folding laundry with care, and the memory is a weight, grounding yet painful. The camp, with its calculated cruelty, seeks to strip such thoughts, but they persist, stubborn as roots in barren soil. A prisoner nearby, his cough a constant companion, sorts with trembling hands and murmurs, "If we're sorting their lives, the least we can do is steal their ghosts." His dark humor, a spark in the gloom, keeps you moving, a subtle defiance against the void. As evening falls, the work ends, and you're marched back to the barracks, the yard now shadowed, the air thick with the stench of sickness and smoke. You pass a medical block, its windows dark, where typhus patients are left to die, a policy of neglect that Hearst noted as a grim efficiency. The man you helped is carried there, his fate uncertain, and you feel a quiet guilt, as if your small act was a drop in an ocean of need. Inside the barracks, you pull out the stolen journal. Its pages hold a stranger's dreams, poems, sketches, a life now gone. You read a line about stars enduring the night, and it feels like a message meant for you, a whisper from a world that still believes in light. You think of the man's fevered face, his trembling hands, and wonder how many more will fall to this invisible enemy. The epidemic, unchecked in Auschwitz's squalor, is as much a weapon as the gas chambers, claiming thousands in its silent rampage. Yet, in your act of care, you've carved a small space for humanity, a defiance that echoes the courage of those who, in later years, will smuggle medicine or news, risking all for others. You close your eyes, the journal pressed against your chest, and let its words anchor you. The camp's history, a tapestry of loss and resilience, weaves through your thoughts, a reminder that survival is not just breath, but the stubborn act of holding on to what makes you human. In this moment, you reflect on the absurdity of your existence, sorting the remnants of lives while you hang by a thread. The irony is a quiet companion, whispering that in caring for another, you've reclaimed a piece of yourself. You think of today's world, where kindness is a choice, not a risk, and feel a quiet gratitude for its ease, a contrast to the cost paid here. Your breath steadies, a rhythm against the night's weight, and you hold onto the journal's words, their promise of stars a faint beacon. You stand in the sorting yard, ankle deep in mud that clings like a jealous lover, your hands sifting through a pile of confiscated belongings, shattered suitcases spilling their secrets under a sky bruised with clouds. Your fingers, raw from days of labor, brush against a child's drawing, a crayon sun now faded, and you pause, the weight of its innocence a quiet stab. The capo's shout slices through, urging haste, but you linger a moment, tucking the paper inside your shirt, a stolen relic of a world the Nazis seek to erase. The task is to sort valuables for the Reich's coffers, a grim harvest that began with the camp's growth into a labor hub for industries like IG Farben. You handle watches, rings, and photographs, each item a fragment of a life interrupted, and the act feels like desecrating a grave. Yet, in this mechanical sorting, you find a hidden purpose. You slip a small gold chain into your pocket, not for greed, but for barter, a currency for survival in a place where bread is rarer than hope. Historical whispers like those from survivor Primo Levi speak of such acts as quiet rebellion, small thefts that fueled underground networks, trading goods for food or medicine. You glance at the capo, his eyes sharp as a hawk's, and move on, your theft a silent defiance, a spark in the camp's suffocating gloom. Nearby, a fellow prisoner, his face etched with hunger's cruel artistry, works with deliberate slowness, palming a tiny vial of medicine, perhaps aspirin, stolen from a guard's stash. He catches your eye, a fleeting nod sealing a pact, and you understand. This vial could mean a day's survival for someone fevered by typhus, a plague that swept through Auschwitz's squalor since 1941. You cover for him, stacking a suitcase to block the capo's view, your heart a drum of risk and resolve. The moment passes, the capo oblivious, and the man whispers, "For my brother in Block 11. His voice, low and rough, carries a weight that binds you. A shared secret in a place where trust is a gamble with death as the stakes. The yard hums with muted activity, prisoners moving like shadows under the guard's gaze. You overhear a hushed exchange, two men plotting to smuggle a note to another block, a message of encouragement or news from a clandestine radio tuned to BBC broadcast, a lifeline that emerged in 1943 to pierce the camp's isolation. These radios, cobbled from scavenged wires and hidden in attics, were beacons for the resistance, a precursor to the Sonderkommando uprising of October 7, 1944, when prisoners would strike a crematorium in defiance. You don't join the whisper, but you listen. The words a faint pulse of possibility, like a heartbeat in a corpse. The idea of resistance, fragile as a spider's thread, weaves through your thoughts, a reminder that even in this engineered hell, the human spirit claws for light. You pause over a tattered book, its pages yellowed but intact, and trace the spine, a reflex from a life where reading was a refuge. The capo's shadow looms, and you tuck it away, not for yourself, but to pass to another. A small act of preservation against the camp's hunger to obliterate culture. A prisoner nearby, his hands trembling from malnutrition, sorts with you and mutters, "They take our books, but they can't burn our thoughts." His tone, laced with a dry smirk, carries the sting of truth, a wry observation that in stealing these fragments, you steal back a piece of yourself. You nod, the book a hidden ember, its weight a quiet vow to carry something forward, even if only in memory. The day stretches, the piles of belongings growing like a monument to loss, each item a story silenced. You handle a locket, its clasp broken, and imagine the face it once held, a lover, a child, a life now ash. The contrast to your past, where love was tangible in a Warsaw cafe's laughter or a sister's embrace, is a quiet wound, yet it sharpens your resolve. You slip the locket to a woman sorting beside you, her eyes dull but grateful, a wordless exchange that binds you in this desolate dance. These acts, small and perilous, echo the broader resistance. Notes hidden in laundry, food smuggled to the sick, that sustain spirits through Auschwitz's darkest years. You move on, the capos shout a constant prod, but your mind holds the locket's weight, a talisman of defiance. As noon approaches, you're given a moment to eat, a crust of bread, its mould a faint green stain, and a ladle of soup so thin it's more rumour than sustenance. You sit on a crate, the wood splintered, and force down the meal, each bite a battle against the hunger that claws like a beast within. A man across from you, his face a map of scars, breaks his bread and offers half to a boy too weak to stand straight. "Eat slow," he says, his voice a gravelly jest, "or you'll think it's a feast." The dark humour, born of desperation, draws a faint chuckle, a spark that lights the gloom. You chew deliberately, the act a ritual of endurance, knowing that survival here is measured not in nourishment, but in the will to persist. The afternoon resumes, the sorting relentless under a sky that seems to mourn in silence. You handle a pair of glasses, their lenses cracked, and wonder about the eyes that once saw through them. The thought stirs a memory of your father's spectacles, perched on his nose as he read by candlelight, and you push it away, its clarity too sharp for this place. Auschwitz, with its calculated theft of lives and legacies, seeks to erase such connections. But in these small acts, stealing a chain, passing a book, sharing bread, you weave a fragile web of resistance. You glance at the woman, now tucking the locket away, and feel a quiet kinship, a shared refusal to let the camp claim everything. As the light fades, the work slows, and you're marched back to the barracks, the yard now shadowed, the air heavy with the day's toll. You pass a watchtower, its searchlight sweeping like a predator's eye, and quicken your step, the stolen book pressed against your ribs. Inside the barrack is a cocoon of whispers, where secrets are currency. You hand the book to a man who reads by moonlight, his fingers tracing the words like a prayer. He nods, a silent thanks, and you settle onto your bunk, the day's acts of defiance a faint warmth against the cold. The camp's history, woven with these small rebellions, speaks of a spirit that refuses to break, a legacy that survivors like Elie Wiesel will carry forward. You trudge through the sorting yard's chaos, your hands stained with the dust of forgotten lives, when the capo's voice cuts through like a rusted blade, summoning you to a new assignment. Auschwitz-Birkenau's crematoria, belching ceaselessly now, demand fresh hands for its darkest labor. You're pulled from the piles of belongings, suitcases cracked open like eggshells, and marched toward the camp's outer fringes, where the air thickens with a cloying sweetness that masks something far more sinister. The path winds past watchtowers perched like vultures on high, their lights piercing the fog, and you feel the ground shift beneath your clogs, as if the earth itself recoils from what lies ahead. This is the realm of the Sonderkommando, a unit of prisoners forced into the machinery of death, a role that began with the gas chamber's grim efficiency, processing thousands daily by 1943 under Joseph Mengele's shadow. The Sonderkommando detail is a sentence disguised as survival, extending life by months while binding you to the camp's core horror. You're herded into a low building adjacent to the crematoria, its walls blackened by soot, the air heavy with the metallic tang of ash, and a pervasive heat that seeps into your bones like a fever dream. Inside, the scene unfolds like a vision from a forgotten inferno. Bodies stacked in haphazard piles, limbs tangled in grotesque poses, their skin pallid and slack, resembling cords of firewood awaiting the flame. Historical shadows reveal that these ovens, designed to erase evidence of the Reich's genocide, consumed over 1 million by war's end, their fuel the very lives they extinguished. You freeze, the sight of a hammer to your senses, the bodies a silent accusation against the sky's indifference. Your task is to prepare them, a euphemism for dragging the lifeless forms to the elevators that feed the furnaces, each movement a betrayal of your own humanity. The capo, a Sonderkommando overseer hardened by his role, gestures with a gloved hand, his eyes dull as spent coals. You approach the pile, the floor slick underfoot, and grasp an arm, its cold rigidity a shock that reverberates through you. The body slides free, its weight pulling you off balance, and you steady yourself. The effort, a mechanical dance in this theatre of the absurd. A fellow worker, his face masked by a rag against the dust, mutters as he heaves another form. We're the camp's undertakers, but who buries us? His voice, laced with a bitter edge, carries the weight of truth, a reflection that in tending the dead, You become ghosts yourselves. The labor is methodical, yet each body tells a story in its silence. A tattoo faded on an arm, a ring still gleaming on a finger, remnants of lives snuffed out in the chamber's poison haze. You pause over one, a woman's form with hair shorn close, and imagine her last breath, the gas curling like a serpent in the dimness. The crematoria, operational since 1942 with Zyklon B's lethal efficiency, turned such moments into routine. A conveyor of death that Hus boasted could handle 4,000 a day. You don't dwell, pushing the thought aside as you load the elevator, its doors clanging shut like a final judgment. The mechanism groans upward, delivering its cargo to the flames, and you turn away, the heat from above washing over you like a wave of condemnation. Amid the grim repetition, you find solace in small exchanges, words traded like contraband to preserve a shred of self. A man beside you, his hands calloused from endless hauling, recounts a jest from his village days, a tale of a fool who mistook a goat for his wife, the punchline landing with exaggerated confusion. In the end, he milked the wrong one, he says, his chuckle low and ragged, the humor a shield against the surrounding void. You respond with a faint grin, the absurdity a brief respite, a way to reclaim laughter in a place where joy is outlawed. These quips, inspired by accounts like Primo Levi's descriptions of gallows humor, serve as anchors, reminding you that wit endures where flesh fails. The day unfolds in a haze of ash and effort, the crematoria's roar a constant undertone like the growl of a distant storm. You drag another body, its limbs stiff as branches snapped in winter, and stack it with others, the pile growing like a macabre harvest under the building's low roof. The air shimmers with heat, sweat mingling with soot on your skin, creating a grimy veil that blurs your vision. A worker, pausing to wipe his brow, whispers a satire about the SS, how their uniforms hide hearts as black as the smoke they produce. They dress to impress the devil, he says, his tone dry as the bones around you. The observation a subtle jab that lightens the load for a moment. You nod, the irony resonating, a quiet acknowledgement that in mocking the oppressors, you diminish their power. As the stack diminishes, fed to the elevators in batches, you feel the rhythms seep into your veins, a trance that numbs the horror. Each body is a weight, not just physical but moral, a burden that bends your spirit, yet you persist, the act of fate woven into the camp's tapestry. The Sonderkommando, isolated in their barracks to prevent leaks, lived in this limbo, their knowledge a curse that led to the uprising, a blaze of fury against their keepers. You don't know that future, but you sense the tension, the unspoken pact among the workers to hold onto their souls amid the ashes. A man shares a fable from his childhood, a story of a bird escaping its cage, the moral twisted to fit this reality. Sometimes the cage burns first. His words, edged with dark amusement, linger, a metaphor for the fragile hope that simmers beneath the surface. The labor pauses briefly, a moment to gulp water from a rusty bucket, the liquid tepid and tainted, but you drink deeply, the coolness a fleeting mercy against the furnace's breath. You lean against a wall, its surface warm as fevered skin, and watch the smoke curl skyward, a grey plume that blots the horizon. The crematoria, with their capacity for thousands daily, are the camp's heart of darkness, a machine that turns humans to dust, as Hearst documented in his chilling reports. You don't dwell on the numbers, but they haunt you, a quiet reflection that in this alchemy of death, your role is both victim and unwilling accomplice. The work resumes, the bodies an endless stream under the building's dim bulbs. their glow flickering like reluctant witnesses. You haul another, the effort straining your frame, and stack it with precision. The pile a grotesque architecture of loss. A worker, his eyes shadowed, mutters a quip about the capo. He thinks he's the reaper, but he's just the scythe's handle. The sarcasm, sharp as a splinter, draws a suppressed snort from you. The humour a balm that eases the soul's friction. These exchanges, subtle and swift, are the threads that bind you, a network of spirit defying the camp's isolation. As the shift winds down, the elevators groan their last ascent, and you wipe your hands on your uniform, the fabric smeared with soot like a mourner's veil. The capo dismisses you with a grunt, and you file out, the air outside cooler, carrying the faint scent of rain. You walk back, the path lined with fences that hum with electricity, a constant buzz like the camp's malevolent pulse. The day's horrors cling, but in the small jests and shared burdens, you found a fragile armor, a testament to the unyielding core that no flame can consume. You think of worlds where such resilience is unnecessary and feel a quiet appreciation for their peace, a contrast to the fire you've walked through. The yard empties, shadows lengthening like fingers grasping at the light, and you move with the group, your steps measured, carrying the day's weight like a hidden scar. The crematoria's glow fades behind you, but its heat lingers in your memory, a brand on the soul. In this place of calculated oblivion, your quiet acts, a stolen glance, a shared jest, are beacons illuminating the path through darkness. You hold on to that, a subtle affirmation that even in the heart of hell, the human spark endures, a legacy that history will trace in the ashes of what was lost. The group disperses, and you continue, the camp's rhythm a constant companion, your spirit, though scarred, unbowed in its refusal to yield. You linger at the edge of the Sonderkommando building, the iron door clanging shut behind you like a final verdict, sealing in the day's grim harvest. The smoke curls lazily, carrying a sweetness that belies its origin, infiltrating your clothes, your hair, your very pores, a cloying veil that no amount of scrubbing with icy water can dispel. The air tastes metallic, bitter on your tongue, and you swallow hard, trying to banish the flavor, but it lingers, a persistent echo of the camp's insatiable appetite. The smoke seeps into everything, transforming the mundane into the macabre. Even the mud underfoot seems tainted, its puddles reflecting grey swirls that mimic the chimney's output. You pause by a fence, its wires humming with electricity like a nervous vein, and inhale deeply, only to regret it. The odour invades, a sickly perfume that conjures images of the stacked limbs, pallid and still, awaiting their transformation. Historical undercurrents reveal how these crematoria, expanded under Himmler's vision from 1940, became symbols of industrialized murder, erasing evidence of the genocide that claimed over 1 million, mostly Jews, by war's end. You rub your hands on your uniform, the fabric rough against calluses, but the invisible residue remains, a brand on your soul that no physical act can cleanse. A fellow Sonderkommando worker approaches, his face smeared with soot like war paint from a lost battle, and he leans against the fence beside you, his breath ragged. "Smells like victory, doesn't it?" he says, his voice low, the sarcasm dripping like the condensation on the wires. His eyes meet yours, glinting with a weary gleam, and you recognize the jest for what it is, a shield forged in the furnace of futility, a way to mock the horror before it consumes you entirely. The humor, sharp as a shard of bone, pierces the heaviness, offering a momentary reprieve, a subtle acknowledgement that in naming the absurdity, you rob it of some power. You don't laugh, but the corner of your mouth twitches, a reflex born of shared madness in this place where sanity is a luxury few afford. He continues, his words a quiet stream against the distant rumble of trains, speaking of the bodies as if they were logs in a winter hearth, the flames a cruel imitation of warmth. You listen, the smoke's tendrils wrapping around you both, and reflect on the irony that in tending this fire, you're both executioner and prisoner, bound to a cycle that devours its own. The chimneys loom in the distance, their stacks silhouetted against a fading sun, exhaling the essence of lives extinguished in the gas chambers, operational with Zyklon B's lethal precision since 1942. You wonder about the faces behind the ash, their stories scattered to the winds, and feel a quiet kinship with the workers' Rye detachment, a defense that allows you to endure without shattering. The conversation fades, and you move on, the path leading toward a storage hut where tools are stowed, the air growing thicker as you near the crematoria's vicinity. Inside, the shadows play tricks, elongating like fingers grasping for light, and you stack shovels with mechanical care, each clang a punctuation in the day's dirge. A man inside, his frame bent from the weight of his duties, wipes sweat from his brow and mutters about the efficiency of it all. They've turned us into ghosts to haunt their own machine. His tone carries a chiseled edge, the observation a subtle barb at the Nazis' hubris, imagining a world where their creation turns against them. You nod, the idea resonating like a distant bell, a reflection that in this alchemy of destruction, the human element remains unpredictable, a flaw in their perfect design. You emerge into the open, the smoke now a constant haze that blurs the horizon, its particles settling on your skin like a second layer of despair. The camp's rhythm pulses around you, guards patrolling with rhythmic steps, prisoners shuffling in lines that snake like veins through the compound. You think of the outside world, where air is clean and skies unmarred, and feel a quiet envy for its purity, a contrast to the tainted breaths you draw here. The crematoria's output, a byproduct of Mengelé's selections, serves as a grim barometer of the camp's productivity, but in your quiet defiance, you refuse to let it define you entirely. A prisoner passing by, his eyes hollow but alert, shares a glance, and in that instant, there's an unspoken pact to breathe despite the poison, to persist amid the pall. The day wears on, and you're called to assist in cleaning the elevators, their mechanisms gummed with residue from the endless ascents. The space is confined, the walls echoing with the ghost of groans, and you scrub with a rag soaked in water that smells of rust. The task is intimate, forcing you close to the machinery's heart, where the heat lingers like a fever's flush. A worker beside you, his movements slow but deliberate, quips about the elevator's reliability. They never break down, unlike us. As you work, the smoke's scent intensifies, a pervasive reminder that filters into every crevice, turning the air into a shroud. You pause, rag in hand, and gaze at the chimney's mouth, its maw exhaling the transformed remains of thousands, Hungarians, Poles, Roma, reduced to particles that drift like forgotten snow. The irony settles in your thoughts, how the Nazis, in their quest for purity, have poisoned the very heavens with their deeds. You resume scrubbing, the motion a meditation, each stroke a small erasure of the day's stains, though the deeper marks remain etched within. The worker shares a story from his past, a blacksmith's forge where fire created rather than destroyed, and the contrast hangs unspoken, a quiet tribute to creation's lost art. The cleaning ends, and you step out. The fresh air a relative mercy, though tainted still by the drifting haze. The camp spreads before you, a labyrinth of barracks and fences, its inhabitants moving like figures in a faded painting. You walk toward a water pump, rinsing your hands under the trickle, the cold a shock that revives. A group of prisoners gathers nearby, their conversation a murmur of rumors, Allied advances, bombings that shake the ground from afar. The words stir a faint ripple within, a possibility that the smoke's reign might end. You listen without speaking, the hope a delicate bloom in the ash-choked soil. The evening light wanes, casting long shadows that merge with the smoke's tendrils, creating a twilight veil over the camp. You move with purpose, carrying a tool back to storage, the weight familiar yet burdensome. The chimney's output continues, a grey serpent coiling upward, and you reflect on its ceaselessness, a machine that never tires while you, flesh and bone, must find ways to outlast it. A prisoner, crossing your path, offers a nod and a quip about the smoke. Nature's way of reminding us we're all dust in the end. The observation, edged with resignation, resonates, a subtle acceptance that in this cycle, endurance is the ultimate irony. You reach the storage hut, stowing the tool with care, the clang a punctuation in the day's narrative. The smoke lingers in your nostrils, a haunting perfume that evokes the furnace's roar, but you push forward, the camp's paths leading you through the gathering dusk. The air cools, the haze settling like a blanket over the landscape, and you feel the day's toll in your steps, a steady cadence against the encroaching night. The crematoria's glow flickers in the distance, a false dawn, but in your quiet resolve, you carry on, the smoke a constant companion, its presence a testament to the darkness you navigate, a shadow that sharpens the value of light. Auschwitz-Birkenau now vibrates with distant rumbles that shake the ground like the heartbeat of an approaching giant. The first bombs fall far off, their explosions a muffled thunder rolling across the horizon, Allied planes targeting factories nearby, but sending tremors through the camp's foundations. You press a palm to the earth, feeling the vibrations travel up your arm. A subtle message from the world beyond the barbed perimeters. A world where freedom fights back, as whispers of D-Day landings in June filter through clandestine channels. The SS guards pace faster, their faces etched with unease, a crack in their armored facade that you observe with quiet satisfaction. The irony not lost on you. The architects of terror now tasting their own dread. The bombs continue intermittently, their distant blasts a symphony of disruption that pierces the camp's monotonous dread. Smoke rises from the horizon, not the sickly sweetness of the crematoria, but a sharper industrial haze that mingles with the air, carrying hints of burning metal and fuel. You stand amid a work detail, stacking supplies in a warehouse swollen with looted goods, and pause as another tremor ripples through, rattling the shelves like bones in a shallow grave. A fellow prisoner, his eyes wide with a mix of fear and exhilaration, mutters, "They're bombing their own monster." His words, laced with a sharp edge, reflect the absurdity, the Allies striking at the Reich's industrial heart, unknowingly grazing the edges of this human inferno. You don't reply, but the observation settles, a wry acknowledgement that destruction, when turned inward, holds a peculiar poetry. Rumors swirl like the dust kicked up by the blasts, tales of liberation carried on the wind from hidden radios tuned to Allied broadcasts since 1943. You overhear snippets during a brief pause. Soviet advances in the east, American forces pushing through France. A mosaic of hope pieced from fragments smuggled by daring souls. The SS, sensing the shift, tighten their grip, their patrols more frequent, their tempers shorter, as if the bombs have awakened a beast within them. You feel the change in the air, a charged expectancy that sharpens every glance, every whispered exchange. The camp, with its history of calculated expansion under Himmler from 1940, now feels vulnerable, its foundations cracking under the weight of external fury. As the days unfold, the SS's response turns vicious, their brutality amplified like an echo in a narrowing chamber. Executions escalate, not in the gas chambers alone, but in swift, intimate killings. Phenol injections, a method employed since 1941 to dispatch the unfit with clinical precision, now used on anyone suspected of weakness or dissent. You witness one in the infirmary block, a prisoner dragged in for a medical check, his veins pierced with the poison that stops the heart in minutes. The doctor, his coat starched white as a lie, administers it with detached efficiency, the syringe glinting like a serpent's fang. The man convulses briefly, then stills, his body slumped as if deflated, and you avert your eyes, the scene a stark punctuation to the camp's escalating terror. The capo, overseeing the disposal, quips to no one in particular, quick as a mercy they don't deserve. His tone, heavy with self-loathing, reveals the twisted logic of survival, a reflection that in this hierarchy, mercy is a myth peddled to the doomed. The injections become routine, a silent cull that thins the ranks without the spectacle of selections, targeting the sick, the slow, the suspected resistors. You move through your detail, loading carts with ash from the ovens, its fine particles drifting like malevolent snow, and feel the fear tighten, a noose around the collective throat. A man beside you, hauling a bucket, whispers of a list circulating, names marked for treatment, and you nod, the smoke from the chimneys mingling with the distant bomb haze, creating a twilight that blurs boundaries. The SS, their uniforms crisp amid the filth, patrol with heightened zeal, their boots stamping authority into the mud. You observe their nervousness, a subtle shift from omnipotence to paranoia, and find in it a quiet irony that the masters of fear now flinch at shadows of their own making. Whispers of escape plans circulate, fueled by the bomb's promise, tales of tunnels dug under barracks or wires cut during blackouts. You listen during a water break, the liquid tepid and scarce, as a prisoner recounts a near-miss attempt, his voice low with the thrill of what if. Almost tasted the forest, he says, his eyes distant, the humour in his regret a thin veil over despair. The story spreads, a spark that ignites fleeting dreams, reminding you of the Sonderkommando uprising in October 1944, when prisoners would seize explosives and torch a crematorium in a blaze of retribution. You don't know that future, but the air hums with its potential. The bombs, a catalyst for the camp's simmering unrest. The brutality peaks as winter approaches. The SS resorting to mass killings, herding groups into pits for shootings or injections, their methods a frantic acceleration against the encroaching Allies. You stand in line for rations, the bread a mouldy stump. When a group is pulled aside, their fate sealed by a guard's whim. The phenol, a clear liquid in vials, is administered in a makeshift clinic, heart stopping as if switched off, bodies collapsing like puppets with cut strings. The scene unfolds with mechanical detachment, the doctor wiping the needle with a cloth as if polishing a tool for mundane work. You turn away, the smoke from the chimneys a constant backdrop, its tendrils mocking the finality below. A prisoner mutters, "They're cleaning house before the guests arrive," his voice carrying a sardonic bite. The observation a way to process the frenzy, as if the SS, fear their own reckoning. January 1945 arrives with a blizzard's fury, the snow falling like a shroud over the camp, and the death marches begin. A desperate evacuation ordered by Himmler to hide the evidence as Soviets advance. You're roused in the dead of night, the capo's voice a frantic whip, and herded into columns that snake out the gates, the cold biting deep as knives. The march is a procession of phantoms, feet numb in clogs wrapped with rags, the snow crunching underfoot like bones. Guards flank you, their rifles ready, shooting those who fall, their bodies left as markers along the trail. The wind howls, carrying the distant boom of artillery, a promise that the end is near. Yet the march drags on, kilometers blending into a white oblivion. You stumble forward, the cold a thief-stealing sensation, and feel the machine's final spasm, its cruelty amplified in retreat. Guards prod with bayonets, their faces twisted in haste, as if the snow itself pursues them. You pass frozen forms, prisoners who collapsed, their eyes open to the sky in eternal surprise. The irony whispers in your mind that the Nazis, architects of winter's hell, now flee its embrace, their empire crumbling like ice under sun. You don't voice it, saving breath for the next step, the march a gauntlet where endurance is the only currency. Historical tides reveal these evacuations claimed tens of thousands, bodies littering routes as the Reich unraveled. You press on, the snow a blanket that muffles cries, each flake a veil over the horror. Yet in your forward motion, there's a quiet triumph, a testament to the will that outpaces even death's stride. The column thins, stragglers vanishing into the white, and you feel the cold seep deeper, numbing limbs but sharpening resolve. A guard, his breath pluming like smoke, urges faster pace, his fear palpable, a reversal that stirs a subtle amusement, as if the hunted have become the hunters. You march, the horizon a blur, carrying the weight of unseen stars above, their light filtered through the storm, a faint reminder that beyond this veil, worlds turn without such chains. The ground rises and falls, the snow deepening, and you hold to the rhythm, each step a declaration against the void, a legacy etched in footprints that time will honor as symbols of unbreakable fortitude. The march continues, the cold a relentless adversary, but in your persistence, you embody the essence of survival, a quiet force that defies the storm's rage. Guards falter, their commands weaker, as if the winter strips their authority layer by layer. You observe this, the smoke of breath mingling with snow, and feel a quiet shift, the balance tipping toward an unseen dawn. The path winds, the column a serpent in the white, and you advance, the air crisp with the promise of change, your spirit a steadfast anchor in the tempest. Chapter 12. The Hollow Dawn. You stagger through the snow, each step a defiance against the death march's relentless pull, when a new sound pierces the wind's howl, a low rumble, not of bombs, but of engines, grinding closer like the pulse of an approaching fate. The SS guards, their faces taut with panic, shout frantic orders, their boots slipping in the slush as they abandon posts held since the camp's 1940 inception. You pause, breath pluming in the frigid air, and see figures in the distance, soldiers in heavy coats, their rifles slung low, moving with purpose through the gates. The Red Army, liberators of the 7,000 prisoners left behind, arrives with a clatter of tanks, their treads chewing the frozen ground like a verdict long delayed. The air shifts, carrying not the crematoria's sickly sweetness, but the sharp tang of diesel and freedom's uncertain promise. The guards scatter like roaches in sudden light, their authority dissolving as the Soviets sweep through. their shouts in Russian a foreign melody against the camp's grim silence. You stand frozen, your body a skeletal relic after months of starvation, your uniform a tattered shroud clinging to bones. The snow around you is streaked with blood and ash, a canvas of the march's toll. Tens of thousands perished on these routes, their bodies left as markers in the frost. You stumble toward a barrack, its walls sagging like a weary sentinel, and collapse against its frame, the wood cold against your cheek. A Soviet soldier, his face weathered but kind, approaches, offering a canteen. You drink, the water icy and pure, and your throat constricts, not from thirst but from the weight of survival, a miracle that feels like a theft in this graveyard of millions. Around you, the camp is a tableau of collapse. Gates flung open, watchtowers abandoned. The crematoria silent for the first time since 1942, their ovens no longer fed by Zyklon B's poison. You see other prisoners, their forms gaunt as spectres, staggering from barracks, some weeping, others staring blankly, as if the concept of freedom is too vast to grasp. A woman nearby, her eyes hollow, clutches a rag that might have been a scarf, her fingers trembling as she whispers a name. Perhaps a child lost to the gas chambers, where over 1 million perished, mostly Jews, by the war's end. You don't ask, but her grief mirrors your own, a silent wound for the family torn from you in that first selection. The irony settles, unvoiced. The Nazis' machine, built to erase, has left behind witnesses, their survival a rebuke to its design. A Soviet medic kneels beside a prisoner, wrapping a blanket around his trembling frame. The act gentle yet jarring in a place where kindness was contraband. You watch, your breath shallow, as others are tended, their skeletal bodies carried to makeshift aid stations. Historical accounts note that the Red Army found chaos, starving survivors, piles of unburned bodies, evidence of Himmler's 1940 vision twisted into genocide. You shuffle forward, drawn to the open gate, where the Arbeit macht frei sign hangs like a discarded lie, its promise mocked by the truth of liberation. A prisoner beside you, his voice cracked from disuse, mutters, "Free, but to what?" His words, laced with a bitter edge, reflect the void you feel, a freedom that arrives too late for too many, a dawn that casts no warmth. You wander through the camp's ruins, the snow crunching underfoot like brittle memories, passing barracks where whispers of resistance once bloomed. The ground is littered with remnants, shoes, glasses, a child's toy, relics of lives fed to the ovens. You pause at a pile of ash, its grey dust swirling in the wind, and imagine the faces it once held, their stories now scattered like seeds in barren soil. The Sonderkommando uprising of October 1944, a blaze that destroyed a crematorium, echoes in your mind, a testament to defiance even in despair. You kneel, the cold seeping through your knees, and feel a tear trace your cheek, not for joy, but for the weight of surviving when so many did not. The tear freezes, a fleeting crystal in the winter's grip. The Soviets establish order, their voices a steady hum as they distribute bread. Real bread, not the mouldy crusts of the camp's rations. You take a piece, its weight unfamiliar, and bite slowly, the taste a shock of life against your tongue. A soldier offers a nod, his eyes carrying a quiet sorrow, as if he sees the ghosts you carry. You eat in silence, surrounded by survivors who move like shadows, their faces a map of endurance and loss. A man, his arm bandaged, laughs softly. Bread like this, and I might forget how to starve. The jest, born of a hunger too deep for words, lands like a spark, igniting a flicker of connection in the cold. You don't smile, but the moment anchors you, a reminder that even in this hollow dawn, Humanity persists, fragile as frost but unyielding. You find a corner near a shattered wall, the stone crumbling like the Reich's ambitions, and sit, your body a frail vessel for the memories it holds. The camp stretches before you, its barbed wire now impotent, its towers empty, a kingdom of death dethroned. You think of Warsaw's streets, once vibrant with laughter, now rubble under the Nazi heel since 1939, and feel a quiet ache for the life that was. The contrast to today's world, where freedom is a given, stirs a gratitude that tempers the sorrow, a recognition that your survival is a thread in a tapestry others will weave. Survivors like Elie Wiesel, whose words will later echo this day, carried these moments forward, their voices a bridge from darkness to light. The air clears slightly, the snow settling, and you pull a scrap of paper from your pocket, a fragment kept hidden, scrawled with a poem from before the war. Its lines speak of hope enduring, a frail promise now heavy with meaning. You trace the words, their ink faded but defiant, and reflect on the absurdity of your existence, a number, A1112, that outlasted an empire's wrath. The irony is a quiet companion. The Nazis sought to erase you, yet here you stand, a witness to their ruin. You tuck the paper away, its weight a talisman, and rise, your steps unsteady but resolute, the camp's silence now a canvas for your survival. Years later, you sit by a fire, its glow casting shadows that dance like the ghosts of Auschwitz. The world has moved on, but the memories remain, etched in your lined face, your hands trembling as you write in a journal. You recount the hollow dawn, the Soviet tanks, the bread's taste, and the weight of surviving when millions did not. The phrase "never again," born from the 1945 trials, becomes your mantra, a vow to honor the lost by bearing witness. You write of the camp's cruelty, its 1.1 million victims, and the resilience that carried you through, a legacy for a world that must remember. The fire crackles, its warmth a contrast to the snow of that day, and you pause, the pen steady, your words a bridge to a future where such horrors are lessons, not realities. The journal closes, its pages heavy with truth, and you gaze into the flames, their light a mirror to the spark you carried through the darkness. The camp's gates are long gone, its chimneys silent, but its story lives in you, a quiet testament to the human spirit's refusal to be broken. You think of those who walk free today, their lives untouched by such shadows, and feel a quiet reverence for their ease, a contrast to the cost you paid. The fire's glow softens the night, and you sit, your breath a steady rhythm, carrying the weight of that dawn, not as a burden, but as a beacon, a reminder that even in the deepest abyss, the will to endure can light the way forward. As the embers of Auschwitz's tale fade into the night's embrace, you've walked through shadows, from cattle cars' despair to liberation's hollow dawn, each step a testament to the unyielding human spirit. The echoes of those lost linger, their resilience a quiet lullaby for your weary soul. Let your shoulders soften, your breath deepen, and allow the weight of this history to guide you toward a restful slumber. If wakefulness holds you still, share your thoughts below. Where did this story touch you? Tomorrow night, another tale awaits, whispering through the dark to soothe and enlighten. Close your eyes now. Let the gentle hum of memory carry you, like a breeze across a silent field, into dreams where hope endures. Sleep well, dear listener, until we meet again under the stars.